All right. Hey, good morning, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Wednesday, August 31st, 2022. This is your daily tropical update. We look live at the Atlantic Basin here this morning, where we are about to close August potentially with no named storms. It has been 60 days now since we had a named storm in the Atlantic Basin. No hurricanes, and the last named storm at all was Tropical Storm Colin on July 3rd. It has been an unbelievably quiet month of August across the basin. I know people think that a lot of forecasters are just full of crap and we have no idea what we're talking about. And, that's probably fair sometimes. But the preseason forecast means we go into this month. We had the La Nina, we had extra warm water, we've had a favorable MJO. I mean, everything has been screaming that we should have had a fire hose of hurricanes this month, and we had nothing. I mean, absolutely nothing. Potentially nothing at all if we don't get a named storm in the next 12 hours or so. But maybe we will. Let's see. Let's look at our three candidates here this morning in the Atlantic Basin, and then we'll move over and talk about Super Typhoon Hinnamnor in the Western Pacific. We start off in the Atlantic Basin, though, where we have Invest 91L. Our little wave we've been talking about for several days is going to pull up north of the Antilles, move towards Bahamas and the eastern U.S., but eventually should recurve back out to sea. We have Invest 93L, a subtropical system located along an old frontal boundary across the northern Atlantic. This actually has the potential to become a significant storm in the next couple of days. And if one of these are going to get named, it's probably going to be this one right here in the next 12 hours. So we'll see if we finish August without a named storm. Since 1950, that's only happened twice, 1961 and 1997, according to Philip Klotzbach at Colorado State. 61 season was still hyperactive, including a big old Hurricane Carla into Texas. We'll talk about that on hurricane history in a couple weeks. And then also 1997, that turned out to be kind of below average. So we haven't had a whole lot of analogs to a year like this. I think maybe 2001 is another possibility where we didn't have any hurricanes until middle of September. Then we actually wound up with 9 hurricanes total. So August is not a quiet August does not mean you can't have an active September and October, but it's still very curious to say the least. So we have those two storms, and then we also have Invest 92L, broad wave leaving Africa, has been for several days. It's just kind of crawling around the coast, not going to be an impact or an issue for the U.S. So this one, not really worried about it. Hurricane Center gives these both about a 70-80% chance of development in the next couple of days. Still tracking both of these carefully, but again, still taking some time to form up. This is the morning look at Invest 91L real quick. A little bit of improvement on the wave overall. I'd say one of the big things you see is it's a little more upright. A couple days ago, the wave axis was more like this, so it's slowly trying to move itself into more of an upright position. Typically a indicator it's having a little bit better time with this environment, but there's still arc clouds all around these thunderstorms racing out of them there, indicating dry air is still a problem. Hurricane hunters are flying this morning. They have found somewhat of a mid-level vortex somewhere in here, so it is trying to at least develop a mid-level rotation center. And that is a precursor to a low-level rotation center. So it looks like the storm is trying to develop and slowly is, but it's still taking a couple of days as air is just very dry and overall hostile. Has been an upper level low off to the west of the west of the system that's imparting some wind shear on it, not as much as it was a day or two ago, but overall, not anyone else still struggling with this environment. And it's probably going to take another 2-3 days just to fully get going as it moves along. But if the mid-level vortex is here, and this is we assume the low-level vortex forms, that's pretty good for the overall track. The ensemble models this morning showing a recurve north of the Antilles, not even getting towards Puerto Rico in some cases. Others still showing more of a southerly track, but again, not buying it just because the high pressure controlling this is so weak, and it's just taking so long to get going. I just don't see a lot of ways this doesn't find a way out of town. I'm becoming more warm to this solution. Intensity models do bring this up in a tropical storm intensity in the next 24 hours or so. I think that might be a little wishful thinking, but within 2 or 3 days, I think we'll have a tropical storm on our hands. And GFS Euro suites. Euro doesn't even really develop this anymore. It just kind of lets it die off or whatever, but the GFS does still develop this, but turns it away as a strong hurricane off the East Coast, which would, have some, rip currents and stuff going on, but no big concern. So right now, 91L appears like it's going to develop, but is going to move away. We also have 93L, that subtropical system located along that frontal boundary. This is a subtropical system. We used to not even name these back in the day, but starting I think like 2002, we started naming these. Subtropical storm just essentially means that you have a storm that's partially being fueled by normal weather patterns, for lack of a better term. So you have the jet stream moving through this region, and this is fueling some intensification on its own. It's got cold air aloft funneling into the system. That's kind of making it more of a classic like storm, like a winter storm, if you will. but it also is feeding off the warm tropical ocean waters and the energy from that. So you kind of have a dual, you have a storm kind of 50-50. Half of it is like normal storm, half of it is tropical storm. So we call them subtropical storms, where they're not formed fully by warm ocean water and lowering pressure and all that. So this is gonna kind of meander out here for a couple of days. It'll probably slowly move southward and then eventually take back off. Eventually, the models do bring this in towards Europe as a potentially strong hurricane. Some of the models really take off with this. There's not a ton of them yet, but the few intensity models we do have running on this are already showing Cat 1, Cat 2. Some show stronger. It would be pretty hilarious to get our first hurricane of the season at like 40 degrees north, but that would be just on par for this season while the NDR shut down. Not much in the way of intent or guidance for track yet. European going squish spider. DFS doesn't even care about it. But this is not going to threaten Eastern U.S. in any way at all. So this is our best candidate for being named in the month of August. We have about 12, 15 hours left of that. So if this is going to get developed, if this is going to get named in the next 12, 15 hours, it'll be a named storm in August. If not, then, well, we went all of August without a named storm, which is just wild to think about this year. Anyway, that's all I got for the Atlantic Basin. We'll go over to the Joint Typhoon Warning Center. We have Super Typhoon Hinnamnor, tiny but ferocious Category 4 Super Typhoon. It did make Category 5 yesterday for a brief period of time. Maximum sustained winds 160 miles an hour for a period. Became the first Category 5 of the season in any basin and also the strongest storm to date this calendar year in any basin. This is the latest forecast graphic for it, showing the slow weakening over the next few days. 125 knots this morning, still 145 mile an hour Super Typhoon, Category 4 equivalent. And it's going to dive a bit further south and then stall for a couple of days as it slowly makes this recurving loop. Some of these southern islands of Japan are going to get hammered with days of heavy rainfall and potentially high winds. Even at its weakest point, Joint Typhoon Warning Center still forecasts this to be a 100-knot typhoon, which is 115 miles an hour, or Category 3 on the Saffir-Simpson scale. So this is not going to go below Category 3 intensity, even at its weakest point. It's going to weaken some due to some of the environmental impacts and the slow movement over the water. It means it's going to upwell all its warm water and start hitting colder water. But still expected to be a significantly strong typhoon as it moves back north, and the potential for this to recur potentially either into Japan or the Korean Peninsula is pretty high. They have this trucking a bit further north, but some models bring it more like this and go over the mainland of Japan potentially as a strong typhoon, 115 knots at the end of the forecast period. It's 130 miles an hour, or Category 4. So potentially a Category 4 typhoon coming back into this region somewhere could have some serious impacts down the road. But in the shorter term, obviously a lot of heavy rainfall for these islands, well over a foot in some cases, probably 2 feet at least isolated, and prolonged periods of tropical storm or typhoon force winds for several days. So this is going to be a rough one there. And if you look at the larger satellite presentation, it's kind of interesting. You have a tropical depression down here, tropical depression 13, which the center is actually right here, partially exposed. You have all this cloud mass down to the south. And this is slowly moving towards Hinnamnor. And what they're doing is they're kind of pinwheeling around each other. Hinnamnor is diving further south in response, and this is kind of pinwheeling up towards it. This is what we call the Fujiwara effect, where two low pressure areas kind of dance around each other. They kind of do this little dance. Now, Hinnamnor is much stronger, so it's going to pull this towards it. But this is probably going to wrap up, and it's probably going to cause Hinnamnor to grow in size. And then you're going to have a bigger typhoon moving away and re-intensifying. So this is something still to watch, and it's going to be pretty fascinating to watch it play out over a couple days. Like, this will be one of the satellite loops you save and, show your friends one day, and then your friends think you're weird, but it happens anyway. Off track here. But something to watch in the next couple of days as well for the Western Pacific and, Super Typhoons, big stuff. So that's what I got for you guys this morning on your tropical update. Again, none of these systems are a big threat to the eastern U.S. We will go into the month of September with no substantial tropical threats. We'll keep an eye on 91L just in case something weird happens. These two are going to move away and just kind of do nothing. So that's what I got for you guys this morning. As always, thanks for watching. Have a good one.